Quick warning, some of these stories may contain subject matter that may be sensitive to some viewers, and as always, viewer discretion is advised. Plus, if you got a story you want to send my way, go to astheravendreams.com and you can figure out what to do from there, because it's pretty simple. But yeah, anyways, thank you. I went to a university out of state, mainly due to the scholarship that I got and pressure from my parents to choose this school due to said scholarship. Since it was out of state, that meant dorm living, and that also means that you will have a roommate. I was typically shy at first with people until I got to know you, and then I could be very outgoing, so it was awkward when I first moved in and didn't know the other girl I would be living with for several months to maybe even years. I lived with one girl for the first semester, but she ended up dropping out, so I had the place to myself over the holiday break. Then a girl was being moved in with me. She was far more outgoing than I was, but to my surprise, she was typically very respectful to me and my stuff. I always thought back to the movies with the quiet girl being roomed with the popular party girl, and how they would always be mean and tease the girl, but that was far from it, actually. I offered to help her with stuff, and she offered to go get us dinner that night, too. We just sat and talked about classes, our pet peeves, and set boundaries that we both really agreed with. I actually felt pretty good about this one. The last girl and I seemed to just coexist in this room, but I really did get along with Mackenzie. As the months went on, she would go out and party. She asked me a few times if I wanted to go, but I always declined, so she started just telling me where she was going in case I wanted to show up as well. Sometimes she would come back drunk, but she was never obnoxious either. If I was awake, watching a movie, studying, or something, she'd come in a little louder at first, ask how I was, and she liked to be hands-on, too. Hugging me, petting or brushing my hair with her hands, or occasionally groped me or something. I knew this was just who she was, so I never thought anything of it. After a while, I would help her climb into bed, because she slept on the top bunk so she didn't fall off, and then she spouted about how I was the best roommate ever. The normal mushy stuff. If I was already asleep, she would come in giggly and, no joke, would go, "Shush, Mac, she's sleeping," and start giggling like a child. If I wasn't fully asleep, I would always start laughing too because it genuinely cracked me up. Then she would try to lay in my bed with me, which was fine. Like I said, when she gets blitzed and hits a bed or floor, she is out and there is no waking her. So, yeah, I would say we got along pretty well. Towards the end of the year, though, I would really start to hunker down and study a lot. My friends I had there got annoyed by it, and one of them had actually said something to the effect of, "You let me know when you want to talk to me again." In the nicest, most passive way possible, I guess. Some would study with me, but they would get too distracted, so I preferred to work alone. I was also one of those people where if our professor gave us the cheat index card, I was making a list and writing every little thing I felt was needed on that card, so that it was perfect. Mac did her best to leave me alone, too. She definitely was not much of a study person until maybe the weekend before, but she did also ask for help on some of the Gen Ed classes. Surprisingly, though, when it came to schoolwork, she was serious about it. She wanted to understand it and wanted to make sure she could do it without help. Maybe that's why she didn't worry about studying as much, because when we studied together throughout the year, it all stuck for her. Anyways, as I mentioned, I usually stayed to myself and probably stressed myself out more than what was needed. On one night while I was studying, Mac was just about to go out for a dinner party with a few of her friends. I teased her because I knew she had class the next morning and that, with her record, she would be home late. She agreed, but said that she would be fine and that it was probably best for her to not be home while I was studying. So I agreed, and I bid her a safe night. I ended up staying up later than I was anticipating, so I packed up my stuff and crashed pretty quick. At least 2 hours later, Mac had come home. I typically put the TV sleep timer on for 2 hours, and it was already off. I was facing toward the wall, but her shutting the door woke me up. She usually let it close softly if she knew I was asleep, but this time, she let it close on its own, which made a loud clicking sound, which is what woke me up. I opened my eyes and lifted my head, but immediately laid it back down and pulled the blanket up more. As I started to drift back to sleep, I felt like I was being watched and assumed it was probably just Mac standing by my bed. Expecting her to probably try and lay down next to me, I ignored it. And that's when I felt pressure on the edge of my bed, like someone was sitting on it, and then I started being groped on my butt and hip. Again, Mac played around like that, especially when she was drunk, so I let out one of those large sighs, but still being nice, I chuckled softly and said something like, "Not tonight, Mac. I've got that final tomorrow, unless you need help with something." That's when the hand moved away and not a word was said. I felt bad at first, thinking maybe I may have upset her, so I told myself to apologize in the morning. Then I heard her climb up on her bunk and sighed really loud. That was the last thing I remembered until I woke up the next morning to a thud and then the door being slammed shut. It was still a little dark out and the lights were off, so I couldn't see much, but my first thought was that Mac realized she was running late and rushed off really quick. I laid in my bed for a little while longer since my alarm hadn't gone off. My class was around noon, so I wanted to sleep in a bit longer before I got up to take a shower. After I got up and showered, I went back to our dorm to get ready to go, and was surprised to see Mac in there pulling off her blanket. I made a comment about her being home when she had her final, when she cut me off quickly, saying they had to reschedule it due to some kind of electrical issue on campus, but hey, why is my bed wet? I was confused by this, what was going on with campus, but also, why would I know why her bed was wet? She's the one that slept in it, so I said, "I don't know, Mac. Was it wet when you came home or when you woke up?" She was about to smell the sheets when she looked up at me, and the color drained from her face, and she said, "What do you mean?" So, again, thinking maybe she was hungover, I explained how she came home, what she did to me, and then went to her bed. So I asked again if she took a drink to bed, did she get sick, or maybe have an accident? At this point, she looked terrified. Then I asked her what was wrong. "Rachel, I didn't come home last night." "Someone definitely came into our room that night. They touched me and slept in her bed, and God knows what else they did." We were both immediately curious because, in order to get in here, you would need the key to our room unless it was already unlocked or picked. But in order to get into the dorm building, you have to have a female's student ID badge to scan, or be part of the staff. The male students' badges don't even work on ours and vice versa. so we figured it must have been another female student. Mac didn't remember if she'd locked the door that night, and I didn't check it. If we were home, we didn't often lock it anyways, so it wasn't that big of a deal. The problem we did have was if any of our stuff was stolen first. After looking around at our belongings and valuables, and not seeing anything missing, I then helped Mac replace her bedding after determining that her bed was wet because the stranger had peed in the bed. Great. At this point, though, Mac is now pissed and wants to report it, so after cleaning up, we went to the campus security to report the break-in. As we started telling the guy what had happened, his face again went from annoyed that he was dealing with girl drama to this just got serious when we mentioned that someone had peed in her bed. He then wanted us to explain everything in detail, which is where I came in. I had to explain everything that happened that night, down to the random groping and why it didn't immediately alarm me. Thankfully, Mac said what I was too shy to say. She asked what the hell was going on, and he explained that someone else had reported their bed being wet too, and he chalked it up to them just not remembering or a friend playing a prank. However, this was reported in the men's dorm rooms. He also recalled a student reporting her ID missing earlier that week. He told us to keep an eye on our badges and to make sure we lock our doors, even if we're home, and then had us go back. We walked back confused and tried to work it out in our head. Was it a guy then? Did they find and use the missing badge or steal it? Was it just coincidental that it happened in the men's dorm room too? I got a call that my final was being rescheduled as well due to the electrical issues, so we stayed home all that day just thinking about it. Our finals that day were rescheduled for that Saturday morning, that way it didn't bleed into another week. That meant that both of us were up early. Before we started our finals, we were asked to go to campus security. When we got there were 2 other girls and a guy there with the officer that took our report. And they asked us to go over the information again, and as each one of us talked, the others would nod and agree that the same thing happened in their dorm as well. There ended up being another report of someone peeing the bed, and then another girl saw a guy trying to look into the window of one of the dorm rooms, and he took off when he noticed her. At this point, security checked the cameras based on some of the times we gave, and saw a guy in a dark hoodie swipe a badge, and then enter the dorm. Then, on the morning that I mentioned hearing him take off, they saw him leave, but they forgot about their hood, leaving their face open to the camera. Security asked us if we recognized the guy, because he looked too old to be a student, and he didn't recognize it as a staff member. None of us did, though. At this point, getting confirmation of some strange man being in our dorm and groping me has me freaking and grossed out. They ended up having a police officer patrolling the dorm areas after dark, which did make me feel a bit better, but this guy was still out there somewhere, and we had no idea where he came from. Thankfully, our dean took this very seriously, and actually started calling in students in groups to ask them if they recognized the person, and finally, someone did. They had said they saw him working on the fields, like planting flowers or working on the sprinklers maybe, but they hadn't seen him in some time. Lucky for me, I knew the dean's assistant and they kept me updated from there. She had to look up anyone that had contracted to do work on the fields and the lawn, and then ask them about an employee matching that description, but none of them ever turned out. We don't know if the guy just pretended to be working for them to get onto the campus, or maybe they quit soon after they started doing this, or whatever the case may be. Because I was technically assaulted, They told me they would keep me informed if they ever found the guy so I could press charges too, but so far nothing. I've since graduated and transferred to another school, and Mackenzie actually followed, and we now have our own apartment, where we hold on to our keys tightly and always lock our doors. But to the random guy that peed in our beds and groped me, I would really rather that we never meet again. Okay, so this happened to me when I was 18 or 19. I'm female and was in a college town in the South. I had a terrible college experience in general, but this just added to the shit show that was my first year. To set the scene, I lived in a sweet building with a parking garage attached to it. There were probably 4 to 5 levels to the garage. The top level of this parking garage was ground level. The suite building was maybe a 5-minute walk down a sidewalk to the entrance of the suites. There was a little room with windows that housed the elevator close to the sidewalk. My boyfriend at the time lived off campus, and I hated being on campus so much, for reasons I will not go into right now, that I spent a lot of time at his house in a neighboring town. I had an 8 a.m. class, so I would usually go back to my suite at some point in the night or early morning. One night, I got back around 2 a.m. The parking garage was pretty full this night, and I had to park at the end furthest from the building, closer to the ramp that went to the lower level. I'm terrified of being inside of parking garages, so I always parked on top. It was pretty dark, and I usually would call my sister or my boyfriend if I was ever spooked. But this night was normal, and I didn't feel the need to bother anyone so late. I was almost to the sidewalk when I noticed someone in the little room where the elevator was. They'd been behind a wall, but I saw them emerge. He had not just come out of the elevator, as I would have seen the doors open through the windows. I didn't get a great look at the person, but I could tell that it was a middle-aged man. And I found it odd that he was on campus so late, as all of the people living in the building were young and mainly freshmen. I tried my best to just ignore the person and continue on my way, but as I reached the sidewalk, about 20 feet from the little room, he came out and started walking behind me. I tried to be rational and not freak, but the further I walked, the more I realized he was getting closer to me. There was one of those posts where you could hit a button for campus police, but something inside of me told me that I had to not let him know that I knew he was there, and that he was scaring me. In a few seconds' time, I had to make a decision. I just started sprinting down the sidewalk. I immediately heard him pick up his speed and start running as well. He was chasing me. There were 3 entrances to the building, and I usually used the furthest one because my room was on the far side of the building, but as soon as I got to the first entrance, I quickly swiped my card and entered and slammed the door shut behind me. He was right there on the other side of that door. He made eye contact for a second or two and then ran the other way and away from view. I was so freaking scared, and to this day, I wonder what his intentions were. It's probably for the best that I didn't find out. The next morning, I woke up to an email about a strange man that had been spotted on campus. It still gives me the creeps when I think about it. I was a senior going to a pretty well-respected community college near my hometown. One of my classes was an intensive public speaking course with a professor that I adored. At the start of the semester, in this class, nothing was out of the ordinary. My classmates and I either all got along or kept to ourselves. We were adults after all. This was my last class of the day, so I would often have up to an hour to kill beforehand and would always look for quiet, comfy nooks to either study, work on assignments, or watch YouTube. One day, I was working on a paper in a nook near my public speaking class when I noticed this guy from said class standing at the entrance to the little lobby, staring at me. I just ignored it because I was busy. He walked over and stood above me, staring until I acknowledged him with a hi. He proceeded to take a seat near me and start asking me really mundane questions about the weather and our class. I humored him, but eventually said I was trying to work on a paper and would like to be left alone. He just went silent and sat, watching me until it was time for our class. He walked with me, despite me not making eye contact or engaging with him in any way. Our classroom was set up in a way where each row has one solid desk on a big step, each one higher than the one in front, like stairs. I'm sorry, I don't know what it's called, and I'm sure there is a name for it. This guy sat below me, so when I noticed he had turned around in his seat to stare at me, a lot of other people did too. It was very obvious. I chose to ignore this behavior at first, but I started to notice him everywhere. The campus wasn't huge, but it certainly had enough tiny study spaces and nooks that a person could easily hide away from others. That was the whole point of the study nooks. Still, he would always be around, no matter where I went, just watching me. The incident that first made me report him was on a presentation day for our class. He found me in a computer lab where I sat with a couple of friends, but was, unfortunately, not sitting between any of them. So this guy, who I'll call Noah from now on, walked up next to me, making sure his crotch was close to my face, and asked me if I was ready to give my speech. I said yes, and I'm trying to work on last-minute changes to the outline. He then pulled a leather belt out of his backpack, and scooting a tad closer to me, started putting his belt on, saying, "Look, I got a new belt for the speech." When I just nodded and went back to working on my outline, he said, "Watch this," and scooted so close that my ear brushed his pants when I turned my head. I was mortified, and I instinctively scooted my chair away, which made my friends look over at what was going on. One of them asked me what was up, and I told them nothing. Noah eventually walked away after getting his belt on, and then I told everyone what happened. My friend Nicole told me to report him after I explained his other behavior, and after class that day I did. I went to the student advocate, and I told her everything that happened, that I was uncomfortable, and then asked what I could do. She told me, I think he may be on the spectrum or just socially awkward. Have you tried getting to know him?" I told her that I didn't want to get to know him, and that I shouldn't have to befriend people who make me uncomfortable, even if they are on the spectrum or socially awkward. She said she would take what I said into consideration, and only to come back if he did anything actually worth reporting, since sticking your junk in someone's face is apparently not any form of harassment. So, Noah kept following me, appearing wherever I was. Sometimes he would try to talk to me, sometimes he would just watch me. He followed me through the parking lot to my car one time. He stared at me in class. He tried talking to people he knew were my friends to try to get involved in conversations with me when they were hanging out with me. After class one day, I decided to go to the McDonald's near campus to grab dinner on my way home for the day. I decided to go inside because I used to have a thing about drive-thrus for some reason. As I was waiting for my food, the girl who took my order came up to the counter and called me over. She asked, "Do you know that guy?" I turned to my right, and Noah had pulled his car up next to the glass wall where the drive-thru line was supposed to be, except there are no cars in front of him and he's 50 feet behind the menu and speaker, staring at me. As soon as I made eye contact with him, he backed his car up and began pulling into the parking space to the left of my car. My stomach dropped. Now he had followed me off of campus. My face must have went pale because the girl looked concerned, and I told her exactly what was happening. That Noah was stalking me on campus, and now he was here. This girl, honestly, my hero, said, "Okay, I'm gonna rush your order. If you feel unsafe and he starts heading in here, I'll hide you in the back and call the police." Just as she got my food to the counter, Noah got out of his car and started walking toward the entrance. I told the girl that I was just going to put my head down and rush past him, get in my car, and get out of here. She told me to be safe. I walked with purpose out of the McDonald's, walking straight past Noah. He started trying to talk to me and follow me to my car, so I ran, got in, locked the doors, and pulled out. I looked in my mirrors the entire way home, scanning, scared that I would see his car behind me. Luckily, he didn't follow me home. The next day, I told my friend Nicole what had happened, and then I wasn't sure if I could report it because of what the student advocate had said. She was appalled, and said that she would go with me to report. We sat down. I told the student advocate everything that had happened since the last time I reported it. Her response was that I was overreacting, and that she would document my report, but wouldn't grant me a campus restraining order against him. She left me with, "If he does something to you, touches you, hurts you, then we can investigate and get the police involved for a restraining order." Nicole and I were angry, and I felt so defeated. We went to talk to our mutual friend Amanda about it, and found out he was being creepy to her as well, to the point that he had followed her to her car and wouldn't let her leave until she talked to him. I guess when he wasn't following me around, he was following her. She said that she hadn't reported it because she didn't think anyone would take her seriously. She also said she had another friend of hers that was stalked by him for a few months the previous semester, to the point that her friend had dropped the class that they had together to throw off his knowledge of her schedule because the student advocate wouldn't help her either. The next day, all three of us, Nicole, Amanda, and I, went to the student advocate to show that he was doing this to more than one person, and that he had actually kept Amanda from leaving. The student advocate finally decided to start an investigation. Unfortunately, all of us were graduating soon by that point, and we never saw the outcome of said investigation. The OP added an edit. I did try to talk to campus police at first, and the officer I spoke to told me that the process for my type of situation was to talk to the student advocate first, who would then determine if it was worth filing a report and taking action. The investigation involved the student advocate talking to my professor and to Noah himself, and it didn't involve the police whatsoever, though I wish that it had. Hey there, hi there friends, hope you're doing well on this beautiful New Year's Eve. And I hope you enjoyed this collection of college-based stories. Always fun to do these topic-based stories. I really do enjoy them, honestly. They're interesting, and I appreciate that when they're sent to me, people who let me use their stories, etc. So thank you to everybody. That's kind of something to get out of the way there. But yeah, no, I really do enjoy doing these topic-based stories, and if you guys have a topic you want to see, do let me know. I have topics selected through February, but schedules do change sometimes, so if you have a good one, please do tell me. I would love to use it. And if you have a story you want to send my way, please do so, astheravendreams.com. If you liked the video, please hit that thumbs up button. If you didn't like the video, well, I'm sorry. What more could I have done to make you like it? What more could I have done? I've been doing this for 2 years now, and I'm trying so... No, anyways, subscribe to the channel if you're new and liked what you heard. If you didn't like what you heard, don't subscribe. That's kind of how that works, right? Support further over Patreon or channel memberships. Hit join down below. Early access, 24 hours, 99 cents a month. Words. Gold. Remember, iron, chicken, nachos, orange juice. I had some orange juice this morning, and it was actually really good. Really, really needed that orange juice to help get better. Vitamin C, right? Vitamin C. But really did need it. I haven't had an orange juice in what feels like forever, so it was good. So I don't know what I'm doing anymore, guys. Y'all have a fantastic day. If you enjoyed, like I said, leave me a comment letting me know what you thought, what your New Year's plans are, or don't. It's up to you. Send me your stories. Like, subscribe. I love you. Hope you have a beautiful day. Happy New Year! 2022 is right around the corner. Yay! I'll see you then. Sleep well, friends.